It wasn't supposed to be this way. Not today. The words stung like a slap, each syllable etched into my skin. There I was standing in front of the small crowd, the very people who should have been proud of me. But instead my father stood there, his arm around Olivia, smiling like she was the one who deserved it all. She, the one who always got everything, every opportunity, every ounce of attention, and now, my moment. My scholarship. You won't believe the betrayal I faced on what should have been the happiest day of my life. Stay tuned to see how a simple wedding turned into a battle of family secrets and emotional reckoning. Trust me, you don't want to miss how this story unfolds. I stared at the two of them, feeling the sting of betrayal, but I didn't show it. I couldn't. I was older now, wiser, more controlled. But that didn't stop the sick feeling twisting in my gut. No, I wasn't about to lose my composure. Not here, not now. Olivia's laughter, light and carefree, filled the room. It was her laugh, that one. The one she'd always used to charm people, make them forget who she really was. But I didn't forget. I never could. The years of constant competition, the subtle jabs disguised as compliments. She was always the one in the spotlight, always the one taking what was mine. I should have seen it coming, but somehow the shock of it still cut deep. I shifted my weight, trying to steady myself, forcing a smile. It was a smile they all knew, too practiced, too rehearsed. The kind that hides the pain, the kind that lets you keep going even when everything inside you is unraveling. But inside, I was seething. I kept my eyes on Olivia, watching the way she twirled, her fingers brushing against the fabric of her dress. There was a flicker of pride in her eyes, a gleam of satisfaction that I couldn't ignore. I had worked my entire life for that scholarship. I had fought for it, pushed through the late nights, the sleepless hours, the sacrifices. But Olivia? She didn't have to do any of that. She never did. She had always been the golden child, the one who got everything without trying. And today she took what was mine. The sting of injustice was raw, but there was something else, something sharper beneath the surface. A plan. I wasn't going to let this go. No, this was just the beginning. As my father wrapped his arm around Olivia's shoulders, pulling her close, I clenched my fists, digging my nails into the palms of my hands. The tightness in my chest grew heavier, but I pushed it down, buried it. Not yet. Not until I was ready. I turned slightly, my gaze drifting toward the window. The rain had begun to fall softly outside, the sound of the droplets tapping against the glass a rhythmic backdrop to the storm brewing inside me. I could feel the cold creeping in from the open window, the chill of winter, the sharp bite in the air. The wind rustled the leaves outside, a subtle reminder of how little control we had over things. But I was about to take back control. The room felt smaller now, more suffocating. My father had never been good at hiding his favoritism. It had always been Olivia, Olivia this, Olivia that. She could do no wrong. I was the steady one, the dependable one, the one who always followed the rules. But it wasn't enough. It never was. It was always her. She could charm anyone, twist anyone around her finger without ever breaking a sweat. But I wasn't like her. And that was going to be her undoing. I caught my reflection in the polished surface of the side table, a face I'd seen 1,000 times before. Strong, composed, but with something darker behind the eyes. I didn't recognize that look, not at first. But it was there, bubbling just beneath the surface. Something had shifted in me. The years of watching Olivia take what was mine, the years of seeing her manipulate our father, it had all built up. The straw had finally broken the camel's back, and now there was no turning back. I turned back to the room, focusing on my father's voice as he congratulated Olivia. He called her his bright shining star, his pride. It was the same words, the same phrases he always used for her. My heart sank with each syllable. Why did it always have to be her? Why couldn't it be me for once? But I knew why. And that's when it hit me, the plan I had been keeping hidden for so long. I had spent months watching, listening, waiting for the right moment to strike. I wasn't going to be her shadow anymore. I would make them see me. Not as Olivia's backup, not as the good daughter. No. I was going to make them regret every moment they had ever overlooked me, every time they had let her step in front of me, taking what was mine. They would regret underestimating me. And they would never forget it. A small, unsettling thought began to circle in my mind. Olivia had always been the one who could get away with everything. She had the charm, the beauty, the ability to bend everyone to her will. But she had a secret she had hidden from everyone for years. And I had it. The memory surfaced like a tidal wave. something she had whispered to me thinking I wasn't paying attention. She had confided in me once, drunk on wine and arrogance, about the things she had done to get ahead. I had known all along, but I never let on that I understood. She thought she had won. She thought she was untouchable. But I had the power now. And she didn't even know it. I stepped closer to the small gathering, my voice steady as I joined the conversation. My father greeted me with a forced smile, but I could see it, the hesitation in his eyes. He knew something was off. He always knew when I was upset, but he never bothered to ask why. "You must be so proud of her, Dad," I said, my voice thick with irony. "She really has outdone herself this time." Olivia's eyes flicked to mine, the smile on her face faltering just for a second. He knew. She knew something was coming. But she wasn't prepared for it. Not yet. "I'm sure you're both exhausted," I continued, stepping closer, keeping my voice calm, almost too calm. "But there's something I think we need to discuss. It's about everything. About all the things that have been hidden. The things you didn't know." I could see the unease creeping into her face, the slight tremor in her hands as she reached for her glass. The confidence was starting to crack. And that was just the beginning. The room seemed to close in on us, the tension thick, almost suffocating. My father's face turned a shade paler, the unease in his eyes growing. But Olivia? She was still smiling, still pretending to be the perfect daughter. She hadn't realized it yet, but she was already caught in my web. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. This was just the beginning. Olivia thought she had won, but I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. The confrontation was inevitable. It was coming. But I was going to be the one to control it. And when the time came, I would expose everything. But not yet. The plan was in motion. The moment she least expected it, I would strike. And she wouldn't know what hit her. The tightness in my chest had settled into something familiar now, like an old friend. It was no longer just anger or betrayal. It was strategy. I had my plan and I was biding my time. Each moment felt like a calculated move in a game I was playing with Olivia. A game she didn't even realize she was a part of. The days that followed that fateful moment at the party were like a slow, deliberate march. I kept my distance from her, but I watched. I watched everything. There was something oddly satisfying about watching her go on with her life, pretending like nothing had changed, all the while knowing that I was the one holding the cards. The cards I had quietly stacked in my favor over the years. I started small, subtle. Little things mostly. A mention here, a casual comment there. Nothing direct. Just enough to make her uneasy. I could see the cracks starting to form. Olivia had always prided herself on being in control, the one everyone admired, the one who could charm her way into any room. But charm only gets you so far when the truth is hiding beneath it all. And the truth, as I was about to show her, was a weapon more powerful than any smile or graceful gesture. I had spent weeks gathering information. Some of it was easy. Olivia wasn't exactly a master of discretion. She loved to talk, to brag, to let slip bits of information she thought no one was paying attention to. That was her mistake. She thought I wasn't paying attention. But I had been. Always. One evening, as I sat across from my father at dinner, I could feel the unease building between us. It had started to settle into his bones, too. He had begun questioning Olivia's actions. At first it was subtle, just small comments he would drop, asking if I'd noticed how distracted she seemed lately. He wasn't blind after all, but he had always chosen to ignore the things he didn't want to see. I wasn't sure if he was realizing what he had missed or if he was simply trying to keep the peace. Either way, I could see the cracks in the foundation of their perfect relationship. "Have you spoken to Olivia recently?" my father asked as he passed me the potatoes. His tone was casual, but there was something beneath it. A hint of hesitation. I looked up, meeting his gaze. "Oh, she's busy, I'm sure." I said it lightly, but I wasn't sure if I was referring to her schedule or her guilt. Olivia had always been busy. Busy being perfect, busy being the golden child, busy pretending she didn't have anything to hide. I swallowed down the bitterness that rose up at the thought. "She's been a little off, hasn't she?" he continued, eyes still on his plate, but his voice had a weight to it now. It was almost as though he were trying to convince himself more than me. I felt my stomach tighten. This was it. This was where my plan would start to take shape. Olivia's mask was starting to slip. She had always relied on my father to keep her afloat, but now with every small crack she was sinking further. And I I was the one pushing her under, one nudge at a time. I don't know, Dad, I said, keeping my voice as neutral as I could. Maybe she's just overwhelmed. You know how she is. Always doing 1,000 things at once. I said this with a smile, but there was a sharpness to my words that I didn't quite control. The look in my father's eyes told me he had noticed. He didn't say anything more, but I could see the wheels turning in his head. That was what I needed. Doubt. Doubt in her. And I wasn't about to let it stop there. The next few days passed in a blur of quiet tension, small but deliberate moves. I watched Olivia closely, like a hunter studying her prey. She seemed on edge, restless, her usual calm demeanor slipping. I'd catch her glancing at her phone, her fingers nervously tapping the screen as though waiting for a message. But then she'd quickly shove the phone back into her purse, her face betraying the slightest flicker of worry. I began to lay my own trap. Every time I saw her, I casually mentioned something that she had done years ago. Something small, a comment she had made, a detail I knew would make her uncomfortable. It wasn't big enough to confront her directly with, but it was enough to plant a seed of doubt in her mind. And Olivia? She was the type to start second-guessing herself the moment she felt someone was onto her. One afternoon, as we sat together in the living room, Olivia brought up the subject of my scholarship, her voice just a touch too light, as if she were trying to mask the unease beneath the surface. "So how's the scholarship thing going?" she asked, her eyes flicking toward me, pretending to sound casual. But I could see the glint of competition in her eyes. "Oh, it's fine," I replied, keeping my tone flat. "Just busy. You know how it goes." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I know, but you've always had a way of getting things done." There it was again, the subtle undermining. Olivia had a way of making it seem like she was complimenting you, but in reality she was always implying that you needed her approval. I could feel my heart rate pick up, but I kept my face neutral. I wasn't going to let her see how much it still hurt, how much it had always hurt. But I also wasn't going to let this slide. I wasn't about to let her take credit for everything she had ever stolen from me, even if it was just her words. I knew what I had to do. The game was getting more interesting now. "I don't need you to tell me that," I said quietly, my voice just low enough that it almost sounded like a whisper. But it was enough. Olivia's smile faltered for the briefest second. She knew I wasn't playing by her rules anymore. The power was shifting and she could feel it. I let the silence stretch out for a moment before standing up. "I'm going to check on Dad," I said, leaving her there in the living room. I didn't wait for her reply. I knew she was rattled. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I didn't need to. Olivia would confront herself, eventually. Each day I laid more traps, each one more subtle than the last. I knew how she worked. She wasn't clever enough to see it coming. I started talking to more of our family friends, casually mentioning things about Olivia, things they had never noticed before. How she liked to twist the truth, how she used her charm to get out of things. At first I thought they'd brush it off. I was wrong. Little by little I started seeing the cracks in their perception of her too. The game I was playing was like a dance, a delicate, slow-moving waltz. Olivia thought she was still in control, but she wasn't. Every move she made, every word she spoke, was another step closer to the trap I had set. I was playing her like a fiddle and she didn't even realize it. Soon enough I would make my move. I had everything I needed. Every secret, every lie, every manipulation she had ever pulled. It was all coming to the surface. I would bring it all to light and Olivia would have no choice but to face the consequences. But not yet. Not until the moment was perfect. For now I waited. The game was still in motion. And I was the one calling the shots. The weight of the plan had begun to feel like a constant companion, pressing down on me even when I wasn't thinking about it. I didn't need to think about it, though. Every move I made, every step I took in my daily life, felt like part of a larger scheme. The moment when I would finally reveal everything Olivia had done, everything she had stolen, was approaching. But I was going to make sure it was done in a way that would leave her no room to wiggle out. I wasn't going to let her slip away this time. It wasn't just about the scholarship anymore. Or the manipulation. It was about showing her that I was done being invisible. She had lived her life as though she were the center of everything, the one who always got the accolades, the love, the forgiveness. And I had let her. But not anymore. Now it was my turn. As the days dragged on, the tension between Olivia and me was becoming palpable. It wasn't something either of us would speak of directly. We didn't need to. I could see the wariness in her eyes, the way she avoided making direct eye contact whenever she saw me. I could feel the shift in her, the way she became just a little bit more guarded. It wasn't enough yet, though. The trap was set, but it hadn't snapped shut. Not yet. I had everything in place. Pieces were starting to fall into position. I had spoken to just the right people, dropped just the right hints. Little by little, people were starting to question Olivia. Nothing direct. I never once accused her to anyone. But when you plant enough doubt, it begins to grow on its own. But the key piece of this puzzle, the one I'd been waiting for, was the wedding. It was my moment, the one I'd been planning for in quiet corners of my mind. Olivia, of course, didn't know she was part of it. She didn't even know I had been preparing for this day for months. Everything about this wedding was mine now. Mine to control, mine to shape. My dress, my flowers, even the way the light filtered through the windows of the church. It was the one place I knew I could control, the one place where I could make her feel the full weight of everything she had done. He thought this was just a celebration of love. I thought it would be the perfect stage for exposing the truth. My father had been a little more distant in the past week. I noticed it the moment he started asking questions, the moment he began wondering if everything was as perfect as it seemed with Olivia. I didn't let on how much I noticed. He hadn't fully connected the dots yet, but he was starting to see little glimpses of what I had already known for years. But I wasn't about to let him off the hook so easily. He had played favorites for too long, kept his eyes closed while she took everything from me. If I had to make him regret that decision, then so be it. I was standing by the window one evening when I saw Olivia pull up in her car, her figure still so pristine, so carefully curated. She got out holding a bouquet of flowers in one hand. Her heels clicked sharply against the pavement, and I could hear the sharp rhythm even before she reached the front door. She was early. She never came early. Something was off. I waited, watching her from the corner of my eye, making sure to give nothing away. She entered, greeted my father with that practiced smile, that same smile she always used when she wanted something. She was always the one to walk into the room and instantly take charge, instantly make everyone believe she had the answer. But I knew better. I had always known better. So, she began as she took a seat across from me, her voice deliberately casual, but there was something sharp in it, like a knife hidden behind a veil of sweetness. How's the planning coming along? Fine, I said, keeping my tone neutral. Everything's in order. It's just details now. You know how it goes. She tilted her head, her eyes narrowing ever so slightly. Oh, I do. I've been in the thick of wedding planning before. It can be a bit much. I swallowed hard. My heart raced with the knowledge that we were circling each other, both pretending we didn't know what this was about. But I wasn't about to back down. Not now. I didn't want to confront her directly just yet. The timing had to be perfect. It always had to be perfect. I was done waiting. Olivia had controlled so many things in our lives for so long, I was going to take this last bit from her. I would get my justice, not in a fit of rage but in a slow burn, a simmering, calculated reveal that would bring everything she had built crashing down. I stood up, breaking the silence. I think I'll take a walk. Need some fresh air before things get too hectic. I could see her eyes flicker, a brief moment of doubt before she nodded and turned her attention back to my father. She had no idea what was coming. The plan was nearly complete. I had already arranged for a few key people who had been fooled by Olivia's charm, to attend the wedding. And not just any guest. These were the people who knew her secrets, the people who knew the truth. I wasn't going to do this alone. Olivia thought she could charm her way out of anything, but I wasn't going to let that happen. She was going to face the consequences of her lies, and I was going to make sure the world saw it. The night before the wedding, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. I could hear the soft rustling of the wind outside, the faint sound of leaves tapping against the window, as if they were whispering secrets I didn't want to hear. My thoughts kept circling back to my father, what he had done, the years he had spent turning a blind eye. He had to see now. He had to feel the weight of what had happened, the consequences of his choices. I didn't know if he would ever truly understand the depth of what had been done, but I was going to make sure he realized the role he had played. I wouldn't let him off easy, not anymore. As the morning of the wedding arrived, I could feel my heart racing with anticipation. It wasn't about the dress or the flowers or the music. It was about what would happen after, when the guests were all settled, when the ceremony was in full swing, and when Olivia stood next to me, completely unaware of what was about to happen. It was time. It was time to expose her, to make the world see her for what she really was. But first, I needed to get through the ceremony. I needed to wait for the perfect moment, and I knew it would come. It always does. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I could hear the sounds of people gathering in the other room, the murmur of voices, the soft shuffle of footsteps. The moment was upon me. I smiled to myself. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about everything she had stolen from me. Everything she had tried to take, from the scholarship to my dignity to my place in our family. I wasn't just going to expose her for what she had done to me. I was going to show her how far she had gone to destroy everything. And when it all came crashing down, she wouldn't have anywhere to hide. Not this time. The sound of the church bell echoed in the distance, signaling that the moment was almost here. The quiet hum of voices filled the air, just loud enough to stir my thoughts but not enough to disrupt the precision of my focus. I could feel the weight of the day, every second pulling me closer to what I'd been planning for so long. I stood in the small, private room behind the church, the final quiet before the storm. The gown I wore felt heavier now than it had when I first tried it on, beautiful, pristine white fabric that should have symbolized joy. But today it felt like a shroud. I wasn't just walking down an aisle, I was walking toward a confrontation. It wasn't just the guests who would be witnesses to my moment. No, Olivia was about to see the truth. As I adjusted the lace around my wrist, I glanced at myself in the mirror. My reflection looked calm, composed, exactly what I needed it to be. But beneath the surface, my pulse raced. My hands, despite being steady, felt cold. I hadn't let myself truly feel what was coming until now. It was one thing to plan something for months. To gather information, plant seeds, and lay a trail of breadcrumbs. It was another thing entirely to stand at the brink of that moment, to know that you were about to set fire to everything that had once been carefully built. I could hear Olivia's laughter in the next room, bright, full of her usual effortless charm. It almost made me sick. How she had always managed to hide behind that smile, to take whatever she wanted with a wink or a laugh, leaving the rest of us in her wake. It was always so easy for her. But now she had no idea what was coming. I took a deep breath and steadied myself. This was my moment. And it wasn't just about exposing her. It was about standing tall for the first time, claiming what had always been mine, even if it had been buried for years. There was a knock at the door. "Are you ready?" It was the voice of my cousin Sarah, one of the few people who had truly been on my side all these years. She had seen how hard I worked for everything Olivia had taken from me. She had seen the quiet pain I carried, always watching Olivia get away with everything. I nodded, even though my stomach churned with a knot of nerves I hadn't expected. "Yeah," I said, my voice steady but a little too soft. "Let's do this." The door opened and I stepped out into the hallway. The weight of everyone's eyes on me, even though I wasn't yet visible to the crowd, made my heart thud harder against my chest. I could hear the rustle of dresses, the chatter of guests, and the soft click of heels on the floor. But above it all, there was something else. An undercurrent of something more intense, more raw. It was the tension of a family about to face the truth they'd all been avoiding for so long. I walked slowly, deliberately toward the altar. With each step, I could feel Olivia's presence behind me, her eyes no doubt focused on my back, unaware of what was coming. I could see the faces of the guests in my peripheral vision, the mix of smiles and greetings, but none of it mattered. And then finally I reached the altar. The Reverend was waiting, his eyes shifting between me and the congregation, preparing to begin the ceremony. I had done my best to make sure the room was filled with just the right people. There were those who had always supported Olivia, yes, but there were others. People who had started to notice her cracks, her manipulations. I had ensured that they would be here today at the very front of the room. The first row where they couldn't miss anything. As I stood there waiting for Olivia to approach, I felt a shift in the air. The moment was closing in. I could feel the weight of her footsteps as she walked toward me, her familiar presence so close, yet still so far away from the truth. She wasn't ready. She couldn't be. I turned slightly to face her as she reached the altar, a faint smile on her lips. Her eyes sparkled, the same twinkle they always had when she thought she had the world at her feet. But there was something different about the way she looked at me now. An unease, a subtle shift in her gaze that I didn't miss. "You look beautiful," she said, her voice smooth, like she was still in control of the situation. I smiled back, but it was colder this time, more calculated. "Thank you, Olivia. You look stunning as always." Her eyes flickered with something. Suspicion? Fear? It was so fleeting, so subtle, I almost thought I imagined it. But I didn't. I knew her better than anyone. And I could tell that the calm veneer she wore was starting to crack. The Reverend's voice broke through the tension, calling us to prepare for the ceremony. But I wasn't listening. My mind was focused on the words I would soon speak. The words that would shatter everything she had built. As we stood there, side by side, the guests murmuring around us, I felt the familiar unease in my stomach. A strange, sharp thrill mixed with fear. I wasn't the one who had always been in control, but now I had the power. I took a step forward, my voice ringing clear and cold in the quiet of the church. Before we proceed, I said loud enough for everyone to hear, I think there's something we all need to know. Olivia's eyes widened, her smile faltering for just a second. She tried to cover it, but the moment had already passed. The game was on. The Reverend looked at me with confusion, but I held up a hand, silencing him before he could speak. It's important, I continued, keeping my voice steady but firm. There's something about Olivia's past that she's been hiding from everyone here. Something that, well, I think it's time you all knew. I could see the confusion shift to discomfort in the crowd. Heads turned, whispers began to stir. Olivia's face went pale, her smile replaced with a tightness that told me everything I needed to know. She hadn't expected this. She hadn't even seen it coming. I've spent years keeping quiet, I went on, my eyes now locked on hers, while she took what was mine. But I won't stay quiet anymore. Not when the truth needs to be heard. The silence was deafening. I could see the way she shifted, her body stiffening as though bracing for an impact. The smirk that had always been her shield was gone. I had shattered it, and now she stood exposed. I turned back to the crowd, meeting the eyes of the people I'd invited here. The people who would finally understand. You all deserve to know the truth. Olivia has spent years manipulating, lying, and taking what wasn't hers. And now it's time for her to face what she's done. The murmur of voices grew louder as the weight of my words sank in. I could see the disbelief in their faces, the shock as they processed the revelation. I wasn't done though. Not yet. Olivia's hands were trembling now, barely visible beneath her sleeves. She tried to speak, to deflect, but the words wouldn't come. I had her exactly where I wanted her. You're lying, she finally whispered, her voice cracking. You don't know what you're talking about. I leaned in slightly, my voice low but steady. I know everything, Olivia. Every secret you've kept hidden, every lie you've spun. And now everyone else is about to know it too. I watched as the mask cracked completely, her carefully constructed persona crumbling before my eyes. She wasn't the golden girl anymore. She was just a woman who had run out of places to hide. And when the dust settled, she would have nothing left. Olivia stood there, speechless, her face drained of color. She couldn't say a word, and for the first time in my life I watched her crumble. The room was eerily silent, the kind of silence that wraps itself around you like a thick fog, suffocating everything around it. People shifted uncomfortably in their seats, the shock of my words still reverberating in the air. It was the moment I had spent years building toward. And yet, despite the power of the reveal, there was no triumphant feeling within me. No joy. It was a strange emptiness that lingered in its place. I had always imagined this moment differently. I had envisioned seeing Olivia crumble under the weight of her lies, but instead, I saw only a woman who had lost everything she had worked so hard to protect. Her eyes flicked toward my father, his face pale, his mouth slightly agape. He had always been so quick to defend her, so unwilling to see the truth. But now there was no avoiding it. He had heard the whispers, seen the cracks in her facade. And now it was all exposed. There was no turning back. Olivia. My father's voice broke the silence. His tone was soft, as though he were afraid to say anything more. He was still processing what I had revealed. But I could see the wheels turning in his mind, the realization that everything he had turned a blind eye to had been real. It wasn't just me who had been hurt by Olivia's actions, it was him too. He had been complicit in her lies by choosing not to see them. Olivia took a step back, her eyes darting from my father to me, and then to the guests who had gathered to witness the moment. This isn't what you think, she finally managed to say, but the confidence was gone from her voice. There was no convincing anyone now. She had lost her grip on the situation, and I could see the desperation in her eyes. You've had your time, Olivia, I said quietly, but the weight of those words was immense. They hung in the air between us, a final acknowledgement that her manipulation had come to an end. You've taken everything from me, my peace, my place in this family, my future. And now it's time for you to face what you've done. Her lips trembled, her hands shaking as they clutched the sides of her dress. I didn't mean to hurt you, she whispered, the vulnerability in her voice almost making me falter. But I couldn't let it. Not anymore. I don't care about your excuses, I said, my voice firm, steady. The anger that had been building inside me for so long, the hurt, was finally being released in these words. You took from me. You took everything I had earned, everything that was rightfully mine. And you made me invisible. I took a breath, gathering the courage to say what I had needed to say for so long. You used our father. You used him like a tool, like a puppet. You made him choose you over me, over the truth. But I won't let you do it anymore. There was a long pause before she spoke again, her voice trembling. I never wanted to hurt you. I never meant for any of this to happen. I shook my head. You didn't want to hurt me? That's the problem, Olivia. You never cared enough to notice how much you hurt me. How much you took from me. And all along I've been standing in your shadow waiting for someone to see me. But no one ever did. I could feel the weight of my words sinking in, each one landing with the impact I had intended. This wasn't just about me. It was about everyone she had manipulated, everyone she had used to build her perfect little world. Now her world was crumbling and there was nothing left for her to hold on to. I turned my attention to my father. His face was ashen, his eyes darting between Olivia and me. Dad, I said, my voice soft but insistent. I know you've always tried to protect her, but you've let her get away with too much for too long. It's time to face the truth. He looked at me, the regret in his eyes so heavy it almost broke me. I didn't know, he stammered. I didn't know she had done all this. I just wanted her to be happy. Happy. I repeated, incredulous. You wanted her to be happy at the cost of everyone else? At the cost of me? How many times did she come to you with her lies, and how many times did you choose to believe her over me? My father's eyes welled with tears. I'm sorry. I didn't realize. I thought I was helping her. You were helping her destroy everything, Dad, I said, my voice breaking slightly despite my resolve. You were so focused on protecting her that you never saw how much it was hurting me. There was a long silence. Olivia stood there, staring at the floor, her face twisted in a mixture of shame and anger. She had no words left. And I didn't need her to have any. She had spoken her piece years ago and it had cost me everything. Now it was time to finally take back what I had lost. I turned to the guests who had been quietly watching the exchange unfold. Some of them were still in shock, others were whispering among themselves. But there was a shift in the air now. The truth had been revealed and it had shaken everyone in the room. The facade was gone and Olivia's manipulations had been laid bare. I could see the discomfort in their faces, the disbelief that had slowly turned to understanding. They had been fooled by Olivia just like I had been. But now they saw her for who she really was. A woman who had used her charm to manipulate, deceive, and control those around her. A woman who had stolen not just my scholarship but my future, my happiness. And she had done it all while wearing a mask of innocence. The silence stretched on, thick with the weight of everything that had been said, everything that had been hidden. And then, for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The burden I had carried for so long, the weight of my silence, was finally gone. I turned back to Olivia, my eyes softening, but there was no malice in them now, only a quiet strength. It's over, I said. And you don't get to hide anymore. You don't get to use anyone to get what you want. Her lips parted, but there was nothing she could say. Her world had come undone and there was no way to rebuild it. Not now. I walked away from the altar, my steps firm and steady. As I passed my father, he reached out to touch my arm, but I pulled away gently. I wasn't angry anymore. I had nothing left to prove. I had finally broken free. Outside the church, the sun was setting, casting a warm golden glow across the horizon. It felt like a new beginning, the world now open to me in a way it never had been before. The weight of my past was gone. I was no longer the quiet, invisible daughter. I was someone who had faced the truth, who had exposed the lies, and who had walked away stronger. I didn't need Olivia's approval. I didn't need anyone's approval. For the first time in my life I was truly free. And that, I realized, was all I had ever needed. What would you do if your own family turned on you in your moment of need? If you loved this story of betrayal and revenge, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. There's so much more to come, stories of family, heartbreak, and redemption that will keep you coming back for more.